of these markets are emerging markets themselves. And so the issue there is that the market may not actually know yet what they want. So it's really trying to help join that connection of the direction of travel of where the end customers are going, what they're trying to achieve, and then matching that up with the technology capabilities is as I mentioned before, is really an important consideration. So as always, it kind of comes down to that working with customers, voice of customer. We say it a lot, but it genuinely is is very important. But really interpreting that voice of customer right in the context that it's being given. As I said, if it's an emerging market, rapidly evolving technology, then that voice of customer needs to be put into context of the fact that it is an emerging market.
Welcome to Deep Dive, the podcast where we will explore the ins and outs of managing deep tech products. I'm your host Ravi Sundaram, and we'll be talking to product leaders about the intricate and innovative process of transforming cutting-edge science and technology into products that shape our future. Join us as we learn from these industry-leading experts on how to turn groundbreaking scientific discoveries into tangible real-world experiences. Today, we have the pleasure of hosting Chris Hodson, Head of Product at Oxford Instruments Plasma Technology. Chris is a seasoned product leader in the semiconductor industry with over 20 years of experience developing and managing products in fast-growing markets such as power semiconductors for energy and electric vehicles, lasers for datacom and sensing, and emerging technology areas such as augmented reality and quantum computing. Chris and I have had a long, fruitful collaboration working together in this industry for many years and have had several reflective discussions on the challenges and opportunities of product management in this space. Today, we talk to Chris about the complexities of defining customer needs for emerging technologies in the wafer fabrication equipment space, the nuances of creating products for innovators versus those for the semiconductor industry, the challenging and iterative process of getting a disruptive technology qualified for production, and how Chris navigates product leadership in this exciting domain. Welcome, Chris. Really happy to have you as a guest on this podcast. I've had the pleasure of learning and discussing product management with you for years now, and glad we can share it with others.
Hello, Ravi. Yes, I always enjoy a good conversation about product management. So there's never a right and a wrong way. There's always lots of different approaches. So it's good to have a conversation and pick up from where we last left off on conversations.
Absolutely, and what I'm seeing is there are many product managers in this kind of deep hardware kind of space, looking for ideas and learnings from others who've done it also. I'm sure people will get a lot out of this conversation. Right. So, let's talk about the industry. With a lot going on in the semiconductor industry, which is constantly pushing its boundaries, and which trickles down into the industry demanding quite cutting-edge wafer fab tools. Can you paint a picture for our listeners not in the space, maybe what role do your products play in the semiconductor industry, and how plasma technology stays ahead of this landscape?
Yeah, absolutely. So take a step right back. Semiconductors, I'm sure many people have heard of them being in the news a lot recently, in terms of shortage of supply in the last few years, although that's starting to ease. Semiconductors are in everything, pretty much every electronic device, and whether it be a computer processor, but it also could be for switching, for power, switching for radio frequency devices. It could be for controlling light or electro-optic devices. So there's many applications of semiconductors. And to fabricate a semiconductor device, there are also many steps, probably several hundreds of steps. And what our products are doing is some of those fabrication steps. So typically we are putting down a layer, a very thin layer of just a few nanometers typically, and then we are etching that layer or etching underlying layers to form some kind of structure, which is used, which form the structure of the transistor or whatever it is within the semiconductor device. So it's basically putting layers and then removing layers in the fabrication equipment that we make.
Excellent. And I guess a key challenge in this space is your market cycles, if for lack of a better word, is driven by your industry customers. So how do you approach understanding these customer needs and staying ahead of them, especially? Is there and is that process the same across all of your customer segments, or are there nuances across the segments?
Yeah, good question. It is, and it sometimes can be overwhelming trying to collate all the information that is out there from the market. And we use independent market research, but there's also no substitute for customer intimacy, talking with customers in the space. Particularly customers where you have a partnership with, which we do both in the academic space, so with university partnerships and joint publications, attending conferences, and then understanding the trends, the technology trends that are emerging at technical conferences, but also then working with industrial partners, understanding which of those are moving to industrial applications and scaling up. So it's really that customer intimacy, knowing customers, talking to customers, discussing with collaboration partners, and really building a picture of the market from as many different places as you possibly can, and trying to cross-reference all that and distill it down as to these are the important considerations, job to be done, market space.
So that's already quite interesting that you say you actually almost collate different pieces of information from the ecosystem at large. Obviously, the customer being a key first point of contact, but you actually pull together from market reports and other publicly available information to build your picture of what the opportunity is.
Yeah.
But how do you go from there to understanding your product requirement or the product requirement for that would serve your customer problem?
Yeah, I think that's really about understanding the job to be done. That's the approach that we would normally, or the customer needs or job to be done. I always think with job to be done, there's a lot of different levels of that, and sub jobs. Sometimes you hear it referred to, but you're really trying to start right at the top. You're going from what's the end application, and then bringing that down as to, okay, well, how getting more and more detailed in terms of what is the job to be done. And then I think there's always a bit of matching that market pull, job to be done, customer requirements with a bit of technology push. What are the capabilities that we have? What can we see? And the trick is to get those two to line up, the job to be done, the market requirements, and the technology capabilities that either we have or that we could reasonably develop through, or that we know from our research collaborations, academic partners, which of those are the promising ones, and make that connection.
You touched on two aspects which I've heard echoed, which is job to be done is not a monolithic thing. You really have to dig deeper. There's a really well-known product leader called Shreyash Joshi, Silicon Valley, and he was actually challenging, do people understand job to be done beyond the milkshake example in the book? and I think you've articulated very nicely that there's a job to be done from a customer point of view, and you'll have to translate that down, digging deeper, because several customer personas could have various slants on the job to be done, which then you translate into what actually the problem you're solving with your product. So the other thing that you mentioned is also a recurring theme, which is at some point in the customer backwards process that you've applied with the job you've done, you really have to take the approach of a technology push to meet that. In our space, this is also a recurring theme where you really have to go out there with a product idea and see if it solves the job to be done for your target customer. So that is very interesting that you're also seeing that and using that as a process. Okay, cool. Let's then dig a bit deeper. Maybe for people to get some tangible understanding of how you go about this process, maybe you can share an example of a trend that came through your, let's call it the emerging technologies segment, and it's translating towards solving an industry problem. Maybe talk us through how did you identify the tech, maybe the industry job to be done, and how did you work with the customer, the iterative steps that you followed, and specifically what role did you and your team play as product managers? That would be quite interesting.
Yeah, so I think one of the sort of emerging trends is I mentioned that these are very thin layers that we are depositing, and also therefore that we are etching, that we are removing. And so when layers become really, really thin, it is all about the surfaces, the interfaces, and really right down at an atomic scale. And so control of those surfaces and the technique, the technologies is we term atomic scale processing, both deposition and etch, is really then applying the atomic scale processing to those challenges of controlling those surfaces and those interfaces to get the best optical or electrical performance of a device. And these are techniques which have been around for some time. They've been developed within the research community first, and we have a good customer base within the research community, as I mentioned before. So it's understanding what the capabilities of these technologies. But then, the role of the product management team is really to be understanding the customer requirements of how these would apply specifically to a particular application, these technologies, and then really understanding the control requirements, particularly as I mentioned, these are very thin layers, so we really need to control these processes very well, and then also how these techniques that have been developed at university level, or maybe in our own lab, how we then would scale them up into industrial applications. Are these technologies things that could scale to a manufacturable, repeatable, controllable? That's really trying. The product manager role is really trying to understand the customer requirements, and sometimes as well, there's another challenge is some of these markets are emerging markets themselves. And so the issue there is that the market may not actually know yet what they want. So it's really trying to help join that connection of the direction of travel of where the end customers are going, what they're trying to achieve, and then matching that up with the technology capabilities is as I mentioned before, is really an important consideration. So as always, it kind of comes down to that working with customers, voice of customer, we say it a lot, but it genuinely is is very important. But really interpreting that voice of customer right in the context that it's being given. As I said, if it's an emerging market, rapidly evolving technology, then that voice of customer needs to be put into context of the fact that it is an emerging market.
I think a couple of points that came that very interesting and applies across various sectors is the fact that at a proof of concept level, from the research community, the innovators of this world, there's an immense resource over there to look out for tech, and then roles of companies like yours and product teams is really to understand how to translate that from there to something that solves a tangible problem for your industry customer.
Yeah.
That is very interesting. And the voice of customer piece, this is always, as we've discussed many times in the past, it's such a nebulous thing and
yes.
very intangible. In some areas it's easier because you're literally trying to go ask a customer, right? You're using this particular app, and how do you
yes.
But
yeah, exactly. Almost the customer speccing the product for you by directly saying, what would you like? Should it be this? Which is great if you're at that level.
Sure. And the other aspect is of a voice of customer, that, as I understand it as well, is really to try and put yourself in the shoes of the customer and try to see what the challenges are, because ultimately what you're looking for is the challenge, because then you can solve the challenge. Are there any particular instruments that you use to get to know the challenge? Do you do joint programs? Do you do feasibility studies directly with customers? How do you uncover the challenge?
Yeah, absolutely. Feasibility studies, as you picked up, is really that first stage of exploring with a customer. Is that the right challenge? Have we got and as I mentioned, that connection between the technology and what it can do, and does it solve the requirements? That's those early stage feasibility studies. Could be ones that we've run ourselves, or could be ones that are part of a funded program, that a government funded program project, various ones in different regions. So it could be a combination of those, taking it through the technology readiness levels as we do these various early stage. Maybe it's a funded project, then it's some feasibility studies, and then it's really getting into more extensive, committing more as you increase through the technology readiness levels. The investment levels also also goes up with the technology readiness level. So at each stage is kind of building that technology, and then building on the investment and the confidence that the technology is right for resolving as a solution for the job to be done.
I think you touched on another topic in the sense of, in the early stages, leveraging of partnerships and of publicly funded projects is a nice way to efficient way to weed out some of the higher risk elements and develop focus on the ones that you have to invest in as you.
It's another good point. Risk is also but inversely proportional to of the technology readiness level, I guess, as well as investment.
Makes sense. I think playing that further, one of the things that is becoming clear in any sort of hardware sector, but especially this kind of sector, is the long cycles of getting from a product idea to something that is qualified to solve an industry problem. From what you've told me, you essentially work with various customer and the ecosystem to get to that point. So in that process, obviously you could go down several rabbit holes in trying to thoroughly solve a particular challenge. How do you balance that thoroughness with something that is realistic and to iterate to get to a product within a time frame, because the other aspect that I understand from your markets is it's a tight window of market that ramps that you have to hit. So my question really is, what are some of the indicators you see to track this thing so that you're on time, and obviously balance that with ensuring that while solving problems, you're not actually forgetting the core customer challenge?
That's a good question, and probably I'll try to answer, but it's quite a number of considerations there, I think. I mean, yes, you're absolutely correct. The time scales, we have to hit certain market ramps, market timings, and within the markets that we're in, the qualifications for our customers, the qualification cycles can be quite long themselves and quite extensive. So they need to make a technology choice and qualify that technology choice, and then afterwards, they by and large don't want to change that unless there's a very good and compelling reason, which there might be. But it's an extensive requalification with their end customers, particularly, for example, in automotive sectors. There's obviously extensive qualification timeframes then. So we've got to hit the market timings. But so how do we kind of know that we are on track and in respect to hitting that, making the progress? I think one of the things I've always thought from an early stage of a project is you understand the job to be done, which is great. But ultimately, at the end, you have to be delivering a product that is a solution to that job to be done. And that product should have a value proposition. Otherwise, customers are not going to buy that at the end. There clearly needs to be a value proposition. And it's not necessarily obvious that the job to be done, if you've solved it, is the value proposition. That needs to be something that's developed separately. And there's often a reluctance to do a value proposition because you think, well, okay, we haven't developed it yet, so how can we do a value proposition until we're ready to launch it? Then we'll do the value proposition. But I think it's trying to do that value proposition earlier to just to develop that value proposition. Okay, this is a working value proposition based on what we think the solution to this job to be done is, to then be developing that value proposition, testing that value proposition with customers as you are, or potential customers as you're going through the development cycles, and refining it. And the real purpose of it is to be distilling it down into what's essential and what's resonating with customers. Because if you have to hit a certain market timing, then it's really crucial to know what the essential elements of the product are, what of the value proposition are. And I guess you can bring in concepts, which is always one that causes a lot of discussion of, what's your minimum viable product for early adopters, a classic definition, to enable early adopters to get feedback on the product, really trying to understand exactly what that is, what's the essential elements of the value proposition that that you're therefore on track to hit the market timing for the kind of essential elements.
I picked up a couple of key points there, which is one is don't wait till towards the end to develop your value proposition. Try and project forward and develop the value proposition, test it along with the job to be done. It's not a one and define a target and teams will get there. You have to constantly test it against what you're learning from your market. Especially more so given this is a longer development cycle, longer qualification cycles. You have to constantly test with each iteration. That's something that came through, which then obviously answers the question of how do you balance the thoroughness versus actually, as long you're focusing on solving the customer problem with your product, and if that's done, that is automatically giving you that target of what your product or a minimum viable product, your beta product at least should be.
Yeah.
And you're building from there.
Good summary. Couldn't have said it better myself.
There you go. I continue to learn from you, Chris. So that's and I think the challenge is to keep those indicators front of mind, and I guess that's where your team and you come into the picture, balancing it with your engineering teams to say, well, right, this isn't a fully solved problem, but it does solve the product issue, so we move to the next step and so on. So that makes sense. I think we can move further on, which is we touched on this market timing and launching. I mean, if you've gone through the cycle, you've got to this point, and you're trying to hit a particular window. So am I right in saying that it's one we've already discussed, that it's critically important to hit the right timing? You want to be way ahead of the ramp in your industry. Which means you're working backwards multiple years, even before a product development program starts.
Yes.
So,
Absolutely.
How do you navigate this challenge? Do you look many years forward? How does that then feed back into your strategic planning cycles and so on?
Yeah, good question. I mean, for that is where road mapping, the core of a product manager, has got to come in. It's around the roadmap that comes from your overall as a business strategy. Obviously, the roadmap is kind of the next level down from the top level strategy, and then there might be many different levels of roadmap as for different segments or different or whatever. And I think that's really important to develop that roadmap. And then the crucial bit, if you want to hit the right timing, is to align that roadmap with customers. And that can be tricky because the roadmap is often an internal document, a confidential document, contains development plans, and so it can be tricky to align that with customer roadmaps. But you can always find a way of just communicating the themes of the roadmap, even if it's not detailing out the individual development projects or whatever, but just the general themes, and checking that those themes align with the customer's themes. So in essence, you might have two roadmaps, one which is if you like, a market roadmap. That's your interpretation of where you think the customers and the market is going. And then you have your internal roadmap, so an external roadmap, and then you have your internal roadmap. That's kind of the answer to that, the projects that you would need to do in order to align up to that market. And it's that top level, that your understanding of the market, that if you like, you're kind of playing back to the customer. Because sometimes as well, a customer might be reluctant to just share their entire roadmap. Maybe you have a great working relationship with the customer. In that case, brilliant. You've got, they're sharing their roadmap. But it might be that you need to first share your roadmap, the market roadmap, your understanding of the market, and then you'll get the customer will point out, look, you probably got that at a bit in the wrong place, so maybe that's going to be a year or two earlier than where you've got it there. So I think it's important that as product manager, you make that first step and be sharing that roadmap with customers to get that alignment and really understand the market timing. It sounds really easy what I've just said, but in practice, it's not, and I think it's real to get that right, to get timing right, and also you're linking that to the internal roadmap as to how long it would actually take to do these developments as well, so as to how far and ahead you need to be sharing these roadmaps and lining it up. It's always a moving picture, and I think that a roadmap, and it's easy for me to say, and I probably should practice what I preach here, but if your roadmap is just something that you put on a shelf once a year for some kind of review, then that's probably not the right roadmap, because in reality it's a dynamic thing as you're sharing it and getting input and feeding back and trying to align everything up, and as you understand the requirements and the development teams are saying how long something will take, the whole thing just needs to keep keep lining up those three roadmaps, which, as I say, can be quite a difficult thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. I keep joking with my colleagues as well that the roadmap document is never done. It's a constantly alive, incomplete document that needs to be nurtured.
Yes. Yeah, I mean, another way of viewing it is almost the roadmap is just the notes of the common understanding that you reach between the development teams, the customers, the potential customers, and the market. It's just kind of the consolidated view of notes. The roadmap in itself is not it's not a thing. It's just a. And if you haven't got that understanding in the background, then probably the roadmap won't happen. It's just a nice. It's just a nice picture for the wall.
I think you touched on another extremely interesting topic, but that could be an episode in itself.
I think so, on roadmaps and how to make them effective. And just to note, I could definitely improve myself on roadmaps. There's always more that could be done. And road mapping software, which is probably a whole other thing as well. How to do roadmaps and what's the best software.
Absolutely, I think all of us are. One for a follow-up, and also follow up on how roadmap. I think you touched on how roadmap is not something product managers pull out of thin air and do. It's essentially a document of collective understanding of all the functions that are stakeholders in this journey.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's brilliant. Yeah, well, we have another episode lined up already. Then.
There you go.
Very cool. So post roadmaps, you've started a project. I think the next challenging thing really is to prioritize against your resources. And in all organizations, there's always healthy competition for resources. There's no one right thing to do. There's always 10 right things to do. Do you use frameworks to help you in prioritization, and do you have to tweak some of the popular frameworks to fit the kind of markets that you're in?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we use different frameworks at different points. So just picking it from where we just started talking about was the roadmap. So at a roadmap level, the framework that we tend to use is the RICE, R-I-C-E framework, so reach, impact, confidence, and effort. We find it's a really good framework for when there's a lot of uncertainty. And it's a way of doing a quick assessment. And I particularly like the confidence element of the and that's a really important one. I always think of that RICE framework, the confidence. How confident are you in the reach and the impact assessment that you've just made? And then of course you could talk with the development teams on the effort. So that's a really good one for roadmap prioritization. We sometimes though add in an R. So it's your reach, impact, confidence divided by effort, but we would also divide by risk, technical risk as well, just to because the confidence, I think, and I may have got this wrong as to how the framework is, so happy to be corrected, but the way I understand the framework is the confidence in your reach and your impact assessment. So i.e. that the market, if you set out what you plan to do, if you achieve what you set out to do, that makes sense, then will it have this reach? Will it have this impact on your customer's job to be done? That is my understanding. That's that confidence score. But then you have an effort, and there's a technical risk assessment that I think you can already do at a relatively early stage. Do you know how to do this? And therefore, so essentially, how confident are you in the effort score is basically, so it's another confidence score, technical risk. How confident are you in the effort that's being made? Do the development teams know how to do it? And or is it a case of actually, no, we don't know how to solve this problem, so there needs to be, as we discussed before, a lot of feasibility studies. So I think that's why it's good to add in that risk into the RICE framework as a kind of assessment. Do you interpret the confidence score the same? Are you familiar, Ravi, with the yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's slightly nuanced way we use it, but it's exactly the same thing. If we achieve our product, will you achieve the goal that you set out with the product?
Yeah.
That's the thing. But I've always felt, and I think we've discussed this in the past as well,
Yeah.
that the confidence is assuming the the technology is going to mature, while your risk element is actually giving a metric to say, yeah, maybe this technology requires certain components which have not been developed yet. And this is absolutely true in some of the more emerging markets like quantum computing and so on, where a lot of the components are being developed on the go while the product is being even marketed. So absolutely the right interpretation, and it gives a little bit of that let's say balance of your prioritization, which otherwise can be very skewed towards where the confidence is high and the end market potential is high. So that's how
which might be how you want to do it. It depends on your resources that are available for development. If you've got unlimited resources, maybe you don't.
Exactly.
But actually, as we're talking here, I'm actually thinking that maybe risk is not the right not the right terminology there. Maybe it's just technology readiness level, or maybe it's as we talked about, on degree of unknown, known solution, unknown solution. So maybe risk is actually probably not the right framework, just as we're talking.
Yeah, it's flipping it into the more into the more positive kind of factor metric, isn't it? It's the amount of unknowns, or the technology readiness, basically. It's essentially. So you attribute your fraction to that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, we would just come up with a new framework.
There you go.
Or a modification to the framework.
Exactly. Patent pending.
The others that we could use would be, once you have then the business cases, the sort of, and if you have a lot of projects, the 80-20 kind of rule of, where the top 20% of projects, where 80% of your revenue could come from. Some others use, and I've often thought this might be a nice way of doing it, is the timing critical prioritization. So going through your projects and which ones are most sensitive to, if it's 6 months late or whatever, what's the sensitivity on the market, i.e. will you miss the market window? And that might be another way. It's not one we use a lot, but I know a lot of people do use that, of just that's the absolute, those are the top priority projects, because those are the ones that are timing critical, that you can't delay. So I guess there's lots of different frameworks that you could use to kind of just build it all together in terms of a picture of prioritization. And of course, this all changes during the project as it goes on.
And as your wider business strategy also evolves, because you ultimately you'll have to align with the overall company / group or
that could all change.
Indeed.
Another
framework which kind of fits somewhere in between all of the stuff that you discussed is something called the 3 Horizons framework, in the sense that you're obviously putting a lot of effort into the timing critical ones that are going to generate your revenue. So market critical, then you do something midterm so that it serves the N+2 kind of tech nodes, and then you have something that is a black swan kind of a disruptive piece, but you ensure it's balanced in that way, that you're loaded up in the first horizon and not loaded up in the last horizon.
That sounds interesting.
But you make sure that you have something in each of the horizons.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. I'll look into that one. Thanks.
Brilliant. So we move into a section of this thing where we try and I ask guests on to give tangible advice to aspiring product managers. So one of the questions is, in any of these sectors, this is a long game, isn't it? So how do you, and you're a manager of product managers, so how do you manage team motivation and maybe your own mindset during these long development cycles, because it takes a while to get to launch?
Yeah.
I think that's always to break it up into manageable chunks with clear success criteria, and most companies will have some kind of gate process that to kind of go through, which helps to do that. So you can seeing the progress through the gates, through through feasibility studies. But I think always is going back to that job to be done. Is it still there? Is that job to be done still there? Are the customers, would the customers still benefit from the solution that you're proposing? Is the value proposition still right? Are is there still that unmet need? Then yes, and is the core technology still the right technology? Just needs the effort and the work and the time to bring it through the readiness levels. And if the answer to all of those is yes, then it's just that's the motivation to kind of keep going. You still have even this long, you might not see the end product. The technology may still have some way to go, but if the job to be done is still there, the value proposition is still solid, then that's the motivation, and you're making progress through whatever gate process is there, is try to use that. But it can be difficult if projects are there's technical challenges within projects, but this is you just got to tell yourself and tell the teams this is normal. If we are innovating, if we are taking risks in emerging technologies and developing technologies, then this is a normal course of development. And indeed, if everything went smoothly, there was no risks at all, the market didn't change, then it was really obvious, then maybe the product isn't as innovative as it could be. You could ask that question, I don't know, but so it's just trying to keep that on, keep the wider perspective.
So yeah, keep the wider perspective. Recognize, break it down into chunks, and recognize when you're crossing certain milestones and stage gates, which keeps things going. And obviously do recognize and reinforce that. Yeah, that's the normal process of going through and launching these kind of products. Right. What advice would you give new PMs just getting into the space? Or maybe I'll turn it around if it's easier. If you were to tell yourself when you were starting your product management journey something, what would that be?
Oh, wow, that's the question. And even now, after being product manager some time, I'm still learning, and we've just learned in this chat. There's the refinements we can make to the to the various frameworks. So by no means am I an expert here, but to give my kind of perspective, I think one of the things for product managers is there is this pressure to feel that you as a product manager must know everything about the market, about the and you should submit a long and full specification, and that can be quite daunting. To how do you go about that when there's so much uncertainty? Because market customer requirements, they can all evolve throughout a long project. You just mentioned the long game. All of this can change. So I think it's just telling us that unknowns are normal, and some kind of I've product management can be quite nebulous, quite sort of it's difficult to it's not an exact science. Specifying these, it is although you're working with development teams who want an exact approach. So I think it's okay to say, look, we don't know that yet, we just don't know, but here's an assumption, here's a working assumption. that we need to validate, and be clear that it needs to be validated, and explain the rationale behind that assumption, so that you're sharing that openly with all the teams. Look, we don't know this, but here's what we think based on this, and it's an assumption. It could change. Because otherwise, if you're not engaging with the development teams on that, then you will for sure have cries of scope creep to your project. When you wanted to get the project started, so you had to make some assumptions, which you then validate through the long development cycles. So I think that's the other thing is we have to have regular reviews of projects, and I include myself in this category. There's often a tendency to focus on the technical progress and the technical project review, but it's just as important to review the commercial part. And again, this is probably something I should practice what I'm saying here more, is really review the commercial piece and the assumptions that you've made and validated, and how they, and as I said, even it might not have been an assumption, it might have been something that was quite at the time seemed quite concrete, but after a long development cycle, the market has moved in a different direction, has changed. So really, keeping those regular reviews going, I think is very important. And the other thing is, we talked about the product management framework and tools, and there are lots of tools that are out there, and it can be easy to talk about them, but in the pressure of meeting deadlines and things, it can be easy to just skip them, and I'll do the tools later on. I think you've got to review those tools as, even if some of them might seem quite obvious, we know all that, is really just view them as kind of like structured templates to put information down, boxes to put information, and as thinking tools to help you think through, when there's all these tight time scales, to think through all of the elements that you need to. It ensures you don't forget things, because the framework is there to remind you to go through all these areas.
Absolutely wonderful advice in terms of don't feel the need to know all the answers. You're assuming things, and the assumptions change over time, and be transparent about that. And secondly, use the frameworks that you started using throughout the process, and yes, try and stick as much as possible to use that as a thinking tool. Brilliant. Brilliant. Before we finish, a couple of quick questions. Is there a book or a resource that you really that inspired you, or that you use time and again, that could be useful for our audience?
Of course, the Job to Be Done book, available in audio format, might be another one to really go through. The milkshake example, the hanging the pictures, all really good things in there in those books. And that book in particular, I always think has one of the sections I really like, and that is, we talk about value proposition, we haven't really gone much to sort of competitiveness, competitive differentiation, but one of the things it says in that book is that the overall customer experience of your product in every touch point in the product, that's the hardest thing for a competition to kind of break that customer experience. So you're really focusing on that customer experience gives you the strongest differentiation, which I really like, resonates with me. So the Job to Be Done book, really recommend that. And there's others on semiconductor product managers about the usual challenges with respect to the dynamic between product management and development teams, which is always a fun dynamic. There's a whole section, I can't remember the name of the book, maybe we can post it afterwards, but there's a really great section in there around the challenges that product managers face as they talk with development teams, and development teams challenge back. But it's a normal challenge, it's a healthy challenge, it should happen. It provides checks and balances. So I'll let you know those.
Yeah, Some great examples. Yeah, Competing Against Luck, Clayton Christensen. That's the Job to Be Done book. And I think you meant Equipped to Win, probably by
Yes.
Michael Chase.
Thank you.
So,
Glad you
yes, so you're not adding any books to my
they're
empty
there.
bookcase.
Excellent.
So that was my ulterior motive. What can I add here? But okay,
Yeah.
nevertheless,
Well, you've got a lot of space in those shelves, so
that's my ulterior motive, to add some books in here. So brilliant. This has been a fascinating conversation. We're out of time today.
Yes, we'll.
How can, if people want to catch up with you, are you on LinkedIn? How's the best way to get in touch with you?
Yeah, I'm on LinkedIn. Just search me up on LinkedIn. And also, if you search my name and Oxinst, I'm sure I'll come up on various websites. There's some terrible videos of me driving electric vehicles and standing under wind turbines.
that always comes to mind. It's a good one.
The outtakes from that, which I've hoped are just, I've tried to just delete these outtakes, but the outtakes from that, because we were standing under the wind turbine as a farm tractor came past with some rather smelly contents, which as I was trying to be professional, but I'm not an actor, as you can see from this, so.
Well, we none of us are. This has been absolutely fascinating, as I thought it would be, given the number of conversations we've had off video on some of these topics.
Yes.
And I'm sure, I mean, all of the topics that we touched on today, really tangible tactics that product managers getting into the space and in the space and seasoned in the space can take away. And so I thank you for your time. And
pleasure. And thank you. So, as always, Ravi, good to talk, and good that we finally put some of these thoughts into this video. So, and maybe there's another installment.
If you like that conversation, please subscribe. You could also engage further by joining the Deep.Tech.syndicate Substack and Slack channel via the link in the show notes. You'll be tapping into a network of the brightest minds in deep tech product.